Pokemon Day came and went, and I'm here to break down everything we saw in it. And I know some people thought the Direct was mid, but you have to remember that it wasn't a Nintendo Direct. It was a Pokemon Presents. They're usually shorter, and they usually only feature 1 or 2 games. And not only did we get more information on ZA, which we've been waiting for, but we got the brand new announcement of Pokemon Championship. So I do think overall it was a good Pokemon Presents. Really good, actually. But that's just my opinion, and I understand being slightly underwhelmed. Regardless, let's go over everything inside that presentation. Obviously, everything that starts like halfway through, because I'm not going to go over the mobile app updates. I don't care. Also, did I say Pokemon Championship or Pokemon Champions? I'm going to mess that up until it actually comes out. But hey, we got an official Pokemon battle sim. So right now, one of the only ways to practice Pokemon battling and do any sort of theory crafting is on the website Pokemon Showdown. It's a website that's pretty fun to use and great for theory crafting and figuring out what teams you want to build, but at the end of the day, the problem with a website like this is it's not super user-friendly, and it's only going to appeal to the people already in the competitive battling scene. So a game like Pokemon Champions is just what Pokemon needed. I mean, look at Pokemon Go. I love Pokemon Go. I played it a lot. Granted, I haven't played it in a couple years, but one of the big reasons why I've dropped it is that the Pokemon battling itself is kind of boring. It's tap, 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 swipe, and sometimes you get to do like a fun pattern. And my favorite part of Pokemon is the turn-based battling. So once I found out that we're not going to actually ever get to do that in Pokemon Go, I started to drift off. But a mobile app / Switch game that's just battling is huge, especially since going off of the trailer, Terras and Megas are here, which opens the door to pretty much every gimmick. Those are 2 different generations. Is this just telling us that Legends ZA is going to have both of them? Or is Pokemon Champions going to be the first ever official Pokemon battle simulator that has every single gimmick that's out there? Z moves, Mega Evolutions, Gigantamaxing, Terastallization, you name it, they might have it, which would be really interesting to see how everything reacts. But also terrifying to consider if you could double up. I don't even want to think about what kind of man-made horrors that could create. But as excited for this game as I am, I do have some pretty major questions. The inclusion of Pokemon Home makes it seem like it might be more than just a battle simulator. If we have the option of Pokemon Home, that means that we're not just creating Pokemon. An actual battle sim like Pokemon Showdown is you just create the Pokemon. You pick them out of their stats that they have, you adjust their EVs as you will, you give them the moves you want, the held item, and then you start battling. And if it was like that, then that would be a true and blue battle simulator. But the idea that we can use Pokemon Home and input Pokemon into the game means that we're not just going to be able to create Pokemon, especially with the fact that the trailer mentioned that you can use Pokemon Home Pokemon instead of just the ones that you can partner up with in Champions, which again, it makes it seem like there's some way to directly get Pokemon within Pokemon Champions, but that's a way we yet don't know. At the end of the day, it's a game that I did not expect and I'm really excited for. But I will be honest, when the trailer started with a montage of like every Pokemon game we've gotten so far, I got my hopes up so high that we were finally going to get some kind of re-release collection, but maybe that's just going to be saved for the 30th anniversary next year. And frankly, if we don't get it for the 30th anniversary, we're just never going to get re-releases of those old games again, and I'm just going to have to accept that. But Pokemon Champions aside, this is probably the thing most people are here for, Legends ZA. And first of all, it looks peak. I don't get a lot of the mixed responses that this trailer got. I saw a lot of people saying that it looks awful, or like that graphically it's disappointing, but it just looks like a step above Scarlet Violet. Like, look at the textures on the ground compared to the main city of Scarlet and Violet. It looks like a similar graphical fidelity, but with more detail and texture, and that's kind of all I expected. Sure, we can always make the argument that Pokemon Company is the most successful franchise in the world, so they should be dumping buckets of money into these games to make them look pristine, and I agree with you, but I don't understand the disappointment. I understand being frustrated or whatever, but disappointment implies that you were expecting something better, and that's just a recipe to be sad, at least with the Pokemon Company. That aside though, there are some major points of intrigue that we got from the trailer of ZA. For one, this takes place in the future, not the past, which frankly, I didn't think would be possible up until we got this trailer, but it's an awesome addition, and really expands the scope of what Legends is going to be capable of. Not only are we looking at the origins of Pokemon society, but down the line we could even get a Pokemon Legends game that takes place in the future of Paldea to see everybody that ended up getting shot forward. That would be really cool. However, even though I was wrong about the time period, I do still think my initial prediction for the plotline of the game remains the same. I still think it's the most likely. We know that Zygarde is involved in this plotline, and like I've mentioned in previous videos, there's a lot of lore that Zygarde is sort of this protector of nature. So making Lumio City even bigger and more high-tech would disrupt the balance of nature and civilization, which could piss off Zygarde. Now the big question is going to be, is this on purpose? Is this just some redevelopment program that eventually ends up accidentally making the legendaries mad and we have to deal with it? Or is this something that's being done purposely to provoke Zygarde to then maybe capture its cells and power the city or something? But there is something that happens at the very end of this trailer that at first confused me, but I kind of assume where it's going. And that's that little shot at the end that we all kind of thought was going to be a different game, but then was just more Legends ZA. My guess is that this is a very subtle hint as to the plot of this game, the thing that's going to drive our character forward. Instead of our phone being possessed by God like it was in Legends Arceus, our phone is going to let us into what I think is going to be an underground battling ring, and maybe we're going to have to bring it to justice or expose it for what it truly is. Kind of similar to that subplot that was in Detective Pikachu. Moving on to the game itself, the battling system is really interesting. It's kind of like a mix of what we saw in Legends Arceus and something completely new. If anything, it kind of leans onto the Ni no Kuni fight style, which is something that a lot of fans have been asking Pokemon to do for a long time. Real-time battling where you and your Pokemon are dodging attacks from opposing Pokemon. Now, from the trailer, it seems like you as a person won't be getting hurt, but that's still technically unclear, because I don't think there was ever a moment where the player got hit with a move, but it does seem like it's just Pokemon v Pokemon. But regardless, being able to pick moves based on how quickly they recharge, their range, and their size is a really interesting concept. Not even that, but their speed as well. We see two moves like Rollout, which is a bit slower and easy to dodge, and I wouldn't doubt if it gets faster on repeated use, but then something like Water Gun, which is a lower power move, is really quick and hard to dodge. There's going to be a lot of really interesting interactions that I can't wait to see. Frankly, the coolest part of this is this kind of fight style demands cool and unique animations for every move. So finally, we are free of Pokemon games having their Pokemon just like shimmy and then a visual effect plays. We're going to actually be seeing Pokemon using Pokemon moves. To stay on battling for a minute, we also get Mega Evolution being back, which, like, sure, we knew Mega Evolution was coming back, but it seems like it's changed as well. In Gen 6, you could Mega Evolve one Pokemon per battle, and it remained that way until it fainted or the battle ended. But looking at the bottom right corner of some of the battles in the trailer, I think Mega Evolution is going to work completely differently. We have this multi-section gauged with the Mega Evolution symbol in the middle, and when a Pokemon is Mega Evolved, the gauge is slowly dwindling. My guess is doing regular moves and or attacks might charge this gauge, and then you can activate Mega Evolution sometime in the battle for a temporary boost. And frankly, this is probably a great thing. On one hand, Mega Evolution, as fun as it is to use, is a completely busted mechanic, so I understand wanting to nerf it in some way. But not only that, it probably just fits the new battling system way better. If it's going to be real-time battling where you're actively doing things and dodging, having Mega Evolution latched to a timer makes a lot of sense, and makes it more of a risk versus reward system. The Pokemon selection so far hasn't blown anybody away. We get a lot of Pokemon that are capable of Mega Evolving, and a lot of Gen 6 Pokemon as expected. However, the starters were an interesting choice, as we got Chikorita, Tepig, and Totodile. Look, it's a fine trio, maybe a little mid, and it's definitely a weird one though. At least, I don't think anybody predicted two Pokemon from the same generation. But frankly, I don't care. I don't care what the grass or water starter here are going to be or could have ever been, because my boy Tepig is here. I'm going to pick Tepig, and I'm going to use Emboar to crush every little Pokemon in my way. If we are talking real-time moves where the Pokemon actually do it, imagine Heat Crash. I want to see that Emboar shoot into the air and destroy every 5-inch tall Pokemon in our way. But the real question is, what will these starters get? Legends Arceus gave regional forms to all the Pokemon, and while we assumed that was going to be a pattern, already Legends ZA is showing us that the Legends games, while similar, are not necessarily formulaic and will do the exact same things. I mean, the battle system is completely different. So are the starters going to get new regional forms, or are they going to get Mega Evolutions? Or the cool option where they get both? Frankly, I hope for both, but I think the most realistic option is not regional forms, but Mega Evolutions. I think there's a lot more creativity there. And I think as a final note, I gotta bring it up, AZ is back, which is crazy. It's not like a huge, like, you guys missed that AZ is back. They point out that AZ is back, but he's also now like a Tumblr sexy man. They made possibly the baby girl to ever do it. Look at this little guy. Well, I mean big guy, but you know what I mean. But also, also, he is a full confirmation that the game takes place in the future. You could have argued that maybe it's in the past and they have weird futuristic technology, but AZ having his floette is a hard confirmation that this story takes place in the future, because after all, he doesn't get his floette back until after X and Y. So either this is way before the mega weapon was ever made, which seems incredibly unlikely, or this is after X and Y when he's gotten his floette back and he's just trying to live a normal life. And finally, I will say, as disappointing as it was to not see any new forms or starter evolutions or anything like that, remember that the Legends Arceus trailer did the exact same thing. It showcased a new battle system, a new location, and kind of how the game works, and that was it. So we got the same. Who knows, maybe we'll get another peek at the game in the Switch 2 Direct that's coming out in April, because you know when that Direct comes out, not only will I be reacting to it live, but of course I'll be making several breakdown videos of the Switch 2 and the games they reveal. But yeah, that was the Pokemon Day Presents. All in all, I think it was a solid like 7 or 8 out of 10. It definitely left me wanting more. Like, I was so surprised when it ended. It was really short, but what we did get was good. But in the meantime, if you want to hear me talk about a trailer that only impressed fans and was peak the whole time, last week I talked about what we know about Sonic Racing Crossworlds, and man, is it one of the most exciting games of 2025 for me. But until next time, you've been watching Rytoost. Of all the YouTube channels, it's the second one. Stay toasty, slices.